Thanks everyone for being with us today. We have a session of 90 minutes and 4 panelists. I'm glad to host this session. I'm Mathieu Gayet from France. I'm a journalist dedicated to XR and now working for the Geneva International Film Festival. Also on XR and immersive content and specialty. Thanks for the festival for hosting us. Thanks to Jay and his team for organizing everything. We'll be presenting 4 panelists right after me, and then we will jump into Q&A questions. If you have questions, please raise your hand, and I will give you a mic because we are recording this session. How science meets art. This is a track in the selection as well, because a few projects are dedicated to this, and this is with the help of the Korean Foundation for the Advancement Science and Creativity. And I'm pleased to welcome two guests from the selection, Vincent and Winslow. You have project here, and so if you want it, they are on the second floor. And then we have 2 guests from Korea as well. But I will let everyone presenting their work and their biography. So maybe we'll start with Vincent. Can you tell us a bit about you?
Hi everyone, so happy to be here. I'm a director. I'm the founder of the studio À Toi, means your turn or yours. We're a studio dedicated to interactive experience projects. We're based in Montreal. We're a tiny team. I've been exploring this bridge between the vocabulary of cinema and the potential and the grammar of interactivity. I've been collaborating with the band Arcade Fire for 15 years. This project is considered the first interactive music video made. And through the collaboration with the band, the first project was based on interactivity with the mouse. And at one point, I thought it would be interesting to develop a project where the full, it make disappear the interface and invite people to dance or to move and to engage with the real world. So I started to develop a project where the interactivity was through gesture, your own body, and to engage and open somehow a different emotional window through a cinematic experience. This is another project that I developed. Oops, sorry, it's a bit. Okay. Thank you, Winslow. It's a project called Way to Go, and it's a walk simulator. It's a bit a hybrid between a video game and a nature documentary. So the idea is to put the participant into this state of ultra lucidity, and the premise of if you take the time and you look around you, you find beauty and detail in the world that you wouldn't notice before. So basically, the idea is that if you take the time and look around, you're finding these little vignettes of little insects, birds, details of nature, botanic, mineral, animal and insects. And this idea of bridging different genres together and give a way, in a way, kind of unfold nature. So we have thousands of video that are kind of spread outside of the experience and that we can discover as you do the walk. This project composition is the one that I'm presenting here at Beyond Reality. It's another project where the premise is to discover an ecosystem, a microcosm, and you're invited to transform, sculpt, build, destroy with wooden cubes. So this is early prototype of the project. It was a residency at the Phi Center in Montreal, and the idea was to kind of develop a project where you're transforming a miniature world through the assembly of tangible objects. And through this participation or collaboration with other people, you're kind of creating a little world. So I invite you to do it in the coming week. And this idea of like just kind of taking out the boundary or having any kind of interface and just engage with the world. This is another project I did recently called Moto, and the premise is again about blurring the line between reality, our own ecosystem, and fiction. And the invitation is to it's somehow some kind of treasure hunt where you have your mobile and you're invited through a story about a ghost to walk in your own environment. You can do this project by walking outside, you do it in your apartment, and you're basically asked to shoot little fragments of video. And all those fragments become part of your own story. So the thing that we record are shown after that in your own project, and you have also the videos of other participants. So you have this kind of big collective patchwork that creates this narrative. And through that I have my own videos that are intertwined into this project. So it's fiction, it's also documentary because it's a snapshot of the realities of all the participants that play this project around the world. That was released during pandemic. So it was quite beautiful while we were all stuck at home to kind of have a peek into the life of thousands of people kind of sharing where they live, like doing some kind of similar rituals, and kind of create something together. So this project was initiated as this kind of AI experiment, and at one point we kept the premises of what this possibility and the palette, but we kind of dumbed it down and used more traditional algorithms and code to make it work. And the last project I wanted to share was also a project that was presented at Beyond Reality 2 years ago. I think it was like the only project since we couldn't put headsets. It was a project where we invited dancers and choreographers to map the body language, so 2-hour choreography. And we trained a system to allow to match the closest pictures with the position of the participant. So you're kind of recreating a choreography out of your own gestures. People from different backgrounds, from different practice, ballet, hip-hop, Sufi, krump, etc., and just kind of colliding all these body types and movement vocabulary. So yes, working with the limits of a machine capacity, but also working with the limits of human imaginary, because even a really experienced dancer, it was a kind of a complex challenge. So there was this kind of friction between the limits of two kinds of intelligence. This is an example that we shot at ITFA in Amsterdam, where the person was becoming all these people at the same time. We also worked with dancers in Japan that had different body types, so that we could develop a kind of a good practice behind algorithm, computer vision, and try to find ways that it was not necessarily just a positive discrimination, but kind of enhancing the uniqueness of those bodies. So thank you so much, and I'll pass the mic to...
Thank you, Vincent. And be sure to catch up with this experience right next door. Winslow, we're going to discuss your work as well. This is another example of the thing is, we're not talking about VR only, but also always digital art can involve human science and technology.
Hello. Thank you so much for coming. It's really an honor to be here. Let me just get this going. This is very much a part of working in technology, is just getting things to play through a slideshow. This is more complicated than a lot of the other work I do. So thank you for your patience. So I've got a lot of slides that I'm just going to blast through. I will also try to talk slow enough so that you guys can understand. But my name is Winslow Porter. I'm an artist, creative technologist, producer, and I work primarily out of Brooklyn, New York. And I would say I got bitten by the creative technology bug when I went to an NYU school called ITP, which is also where I teach. And shout out to Tony Lim in the back. He also is an ITP alum. It's the Center for the Recently Possible, they say. So this also highlights some of the projects I did after I graduated, when I realized that I didn't want to be a film editor. I wanted to actually have more of a conversation with the audience. So I've done work for agencies as well as some of my own projects, and I'm mostly going to talk about my own projects. And I'm also artist in residence at Onassis Foundation's collaboration with New Ink, which there was a showing during Tribeca just a few weeks ago. This is definitely an artist's rendering. This is not really what the space looks like. That would be very cool if they had these ribbon cords going into old school VR headsets, but I digress. I also just wanted to put a little slide for clouds in, because this is actually Elliot. Also, you worked on clouds, but you're in it. Sorry, did you create a visual system though for it? Yes, so that's the first time I got to know Elliot, but it was only a 3D representation of him on a 2D screen. We actually got to meet shortly after. But this is an early documentary about creative code that is in virtual reality. So one of the first feature-length documentaries in VR, and when I say feature-length, it's about 12 and a half hours. So way more than most features. And I can send links to anybody who wants to see it, but just for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the first commercial VR project I did with Framestore, which is a big VFX company based in London and the US and really all over the world. But this is an experience where you get to hike in the Dolomites, and as you can see, that is a Rift 1, or the first prototype of the Rift, and the helmet that she's wearing has like trackers on the top. This is before we could actually do commercial like positional tracking. So it's a hack that we did in order to allow people to actually walk through space. So this is one of the first ambulatory or walking VR experiences that was created back in 2015 for Merrell Shoes. Funny enough, it's a shoe company, but you don't have feet in the VR experience. So after working on the agency side of things for about 4.5 years, I realized that I wanted to use what I learned, how to communicate with clients, how to be able to understand budgets and build teams and start my own studio using very similar means for commercial projects. And we wanted to dedicate our studio, New Reality Company, to doing projects about social and environmental awareness. So we started at the New Museum Incubator, which is that building with a circle is where we started, but that is now a hole in the ground. Unfortunately, they're building a new one, but I call it No Ink now instead of New Ink. I don't know if any of these jokes are going to land. We're just going to keep going. So then the first project we did with New Reality is called Giant. We actually showed this in Busan, in BIFF, Busan International Film Festival, back in 2016. It was really great to be able to show that. This project's inspired by Milica Zec, who is my co-creator on this project, her growing up in Serbia, and really wanting to communicate what it's like to live in fear of bombs. This was the NATO bombings specifically, but communicate that with a Western audience that generally doesn't have to encounter this. And so specifically Syria was happening at the same time, and there's many conflicts all over the world. So, how do we use the power of VR, the immersion that it can allow, to be able to allow you to be in somebody else's shoes, somebody else's situation. So this is one of the first examples of being able to composite volumetric video inside of Unreal Engine. And if anybody here watched the show Succession, I heard that HBO is not very common here, but that is Logan Roy's love interest on the right, Chloe Winters. So what we did is we actually shot using RGBD with a Canon, or with a Red Dragon 5K. We then were able to put that into the game engine. The right, you can see the depth information. On the left, you can see the color, and we were able to composite that. After that project, we realized that VR can, if done well, has the ability to impact the audience, to change their perspective. So we wanted to understand, how do we take that a step further? And just in 2017 was when you could actually have hands in VR, and you could move around. 2016, that was not possible in the Rift. So it's amazing how much technology can change. Basically what we were doing with the Merrill project, that technology cost about $150,000. 2 years later, the technology basically costs $800. So, time changes things very, very fast in this world. So we created a project called Tree, where we wanted you to imagine what it was like to not be in the shoes, but rather the roots of nature. And people are familiar with wildfires, but not really the extent specifically that's happening in the rainforest. Old growth forests all over the world are really being destroyed at an exponential rate. And so we wanted people not just to see it as a fleeting headline, but to witness it firsthand, to experience it as if it was happening to them. We worked with the Rainforest Alliance because we really wanted to make sure that the project was based in reality with people who have boots on the ground, who dedicate their lives to it. As artists and technologists, we definitely know our limitations, and it's really important to build a team to be able to fill in the gaps and to be able to actually have a cause that you can raise funds for. So without me saying too much, I took out all the slides. I'm just going to have Jeff Goldblum present it instead. He's a lot more animated than I am. There we go. Okay. So if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then I'll just describe.
My name is Nina. It's nice to meet you. So have you ever played the role of a tree in your life?
No, that was the punchline to like, hey, I got a part in the school play. When they cast you as well on a tree, it was the
Have you ever died?
from the start, I had some kind of quality that allowed me to play one more meteor roles.
Today, you're going to be the tallest tree in the rainforest. So first, I'm going to ask you to take one seed, and you will be planting that seed. So the next thing is going to happen when you put the virtual reality equipment on. You will be transported inside the soil, and your body will become the tree.
Okay, so I'm putting it on. Wait a minute. That's the seed that I'm buying.
That's the seed.
Okay, well, this isn't playing a trick. Anybody's going to leave from this to be here. I'm growing. Oh, I see other roots of other plants. Hey, I'm getting near the surface. Here I come. Wow. Oh, little insects carrying leaves. Oh, fantastic. Whoa. Hey, I'm growing in a good forest. Oh, wow. Those are my leaves.
This music is definitely added. We do not have this in the experience.
Absolutely amazing. I can smell the soil and everything. It was very, very, real. And then I didn't know anything was going to happen like that. There was a fire, and I felt the heat and getting burned. Seeing all your friends burned.
We as humans take care mainly of our personal and immediate problems. So that's what's the goal we try to personalize this problem of deforestation. Yeah. So now I'm giving you this seed as a seed of hope.
Thank you very much.
There we go. Okay, so thank you, Jeff. As you saw, there was in that we weren't just being able to transport your eyes and your ears, but The other really important elements were olfactory and haptic, meaning this sense of smell. We had 3 different scent tracks that we used, as well as a fan to be able to feel like you were the tallest tree. You grow to be like in the top of the canopy, and we also use heat as well. Most of the time, though, you won't know that that's coming, so that video, while it's great, is a little bit of a spoiler. But hopefully we can show this project. We showed this 4 years ago in Suwon, actually. But at the end of the experience, it's also important that we give something to the people so that they can research about it. They don't just feel doom and gloom and a sense of like helplessness. And so we were able to actually help Rainforest Alliance raise money from from anything from small donations to actually some big companies in Brazil were able to donate a large sum of money through this project. And also, I was mentioning before about being able to build a team. And so projects like this, especially in the US, there isn't that much arts funding. You really need to work with tech companies, brands, and sort of everything in between. So these are all the different groups that we worked with. And each one of these was essential to be able to make this project happen. And with the haptic elements, before I mentioned, these are just off-the-shelf items, like the fan on the left is if your apartment gets flooded, you would use something like that. We just use Unreal to be able to turn it on and off at the right times. And I also use the same thing in Forager. Subpack is a great low-frequency bass transducer, which simulates different parts of the tree's growth as well as the destruction at the end. And that's just a heater. Here's our scent machine from a company called O Widgets, but then they just rebranded to OW Smell Digital. Not my favorite name, lovely people. Hopefully they hear this recording and they know how much I love them. These are different places where we've shown the project. Really, we try to cater it towards where we show it. And our goal is to show it to as many people as possible. Tree has been shown, a little over 110,000 people have seen the project, and that is over the last 6.5 years. And that's very challenging because we can only do 1 person every 15 minutes. And with that, I would love to talk about Forager. I'll show just a quick little teaser here. This is, where we go. This is, instead of exploring the life of a tree, we're exploring the kingdom fungi, mushrooms. So in this, half of this project is a narrative of understanding mushrooms, and then the other half is a technology that Ellie Zananiri and I developed over the last 2 years, which is basically it's time-lapse photogrammetry, where we take a 3D scan of a mushroom growing every half hour using a custom rig that we built and custom software that automates the process. So this mushroom right here took about 1.5 weeks to grow and decay, and we can then put that inside the Unreal Engine game engine. So that is a blue oyster. All these are saprotic mushrooms, meaning they feed off of trees. Here's a pink oyster, which took about 9 days to grow. And really our goal for this project is to be able to use technology, which it seems like an inherent paradox to bring people closer to nature using technology, but I think that there's definitely some hope in being able to use things that are photoreal and trigger your senses. There's many studies that say even that the idea of nature, like a fake plastic plant, will actually bring happiness and bring you a closer sense to nature than none at all. That I'm not really doing, I'm a little jet lagged, my apologies. But yeah, there's a lot of research that shows just the connection of plants or even living near a park will increase your happiness. So the idea of nature is a very powerful one, and how we leverage that through multisensory storytelling is a very interesting field that really hasn't been fully explored. Here we go. So that's Forager. I'll just go through these slides. This is what we premiered at South by Southwest in March. We've got a whole installation made out of myco bricks. Those are myceliated wood, basically. We worked with the architect David Benjamin to be able to build this out. And we showed it on 2 stations. As you can see, people are lying down. We have this set up just over here. And we have wind, scent, spatial audio, and also the haptics in the floor. So this is our capture rig as well. We set that up. Would have loved to have shown you, but this crate is rather large and would be difficult to ship. And then at the end, just like Tree, we give you a physical takeaway where we will actually be giving those out probably later today, which show the old growth forests around this area, because we like to cater it to the local communities so it resonates even more. So thank you. I really appreciate it and look forward to showing you Forager.
Thanks very much. And I'm pleased to welcome Hyunsik Yoo. You're a researcher and you're working in Korea.
Yep.
And you're specialized in audio. That's a big field. We will talk a lot more about that, but audio is a huge part of the immersive field and all the digital art. And often the last part we discussed, so today we will try to bring more light into it.
저는 오늘 주제가 Art with Science, right? Yeah, Art with Science여서 제가 하고 있는 작업들은 사실 저는 그 현재 메타버스 VR, AR 콘텐츠를 만드는 스타트업을 운영을 하고 있습니다. 예, 지금 보시는 것처럼 캐릭터를 활용한 공연을 기획을 하고 개발을 하고 있고요. 백화점이나 관광지에 있는 유통, AR 콘텐츠 유통을 하고 있는 그런 스타트업을 하고 있습니다. 저는 그래서 제가 하고 있던 작업들 중에 오늘 주제에 맞는 형태의 그 사운드 및 사이언스라는 주제로 제가 거꾸로 역으로 가져오고 와봤습니다. 저는 현재 컬처 커넥션이라는 회사를 운영을 하고 있고요. 저는 이제 회사 운영하기 전에는 상업영화, 영화음악 작곡가로 활동을 했었고, 그리고 학교에서 이제 이머시브 오디오 교수로 있다가 작년 2021년도에 창업을 하고 올해 이제 2년차 기업을 운영을 하고 있습니다. 제가 그 과학창의재단 한국과학창의재단 지원을 받은 작품이었어요. 19년도에 지원을 받아서 20년도에 전시했던 작품인데 사이매틱스라고 하는 학문을 혹시 아시나요? 네, 소리, 물리적인 소리, 웨이브를 시각적인 다른 매체를 통해서 보여주는 그런 학문이거든요. 사이매틱스. 그래서 오디오 비주얼, 우리 알고 계시는 미디어트에서 오디오 비주얼하고는 좀 다르게 우리가 이 물리적인 현상을 다른 매체를 통해서 시각화시키는 것이기 때문에 그 소리에 대한 그 주파수라든지 그 음량 이런 형태들을 제어를 해서 우리 시각화해주는 그런 작품이었어요. 그래서 저희는 이제 이 사이매틱스는 굉장히 오래된 연구 분야였었는데요. 실제로는 이제 보여지는 소리 자체가 보여지지 않기 때문에 이게 연구가 많이 되어지는 않았었는데 스위스의 물리학자인 한스 제닉께서 사이매틱스라는 용어로 이제 정리를 했었고요. 저희는 이제 물하고 그리고 이제 그 철판 위에 색깔 모래를 가지고 표현을 해왔었어요. 그래서 지금 저희 이제 저희 팀원들하고 같이 실험했던 장면들, 그 다음에 일부 작품인데 작은 스피커 그리고 좀 저희가 22인치 우퍼까지 활용을 해서 작품을 좀 만들어 봤었는데요. 이렇게 소리를 가지고선 이런 물결들을 만들려면 굉장히 큰 사운드가 필요합니다. 그래서 저희 학교 뒤에 있는 산을 좀 빌려가지고 학교 뒤에 있는 창고에서 밤에 좀 작업을 많이 했었는데 산이 정말 무너질 정도의 그런 큰 소리들을 내었어야지 이런 물결들이 나왔었고요. 실제로 이 사이매틱스를 활용한 국내에서도 CF라든지 관련된 전시작품들이 있었는데 여러 가지 이런 소리에 대한 부분들, 그러니까 아름답지 않은 그 발생되는 사운드들 때문에 많은 작품으로 연결되거나 이렇게 그 오랜 기간 동안 되진 않았던 것 같아요. 물론 이제 소리를 통한 시각화를 시키지만 이것이 결국에는 디지털 비디오를 활용한 그 아카이빙을 통해서 다른 미적 그 표현들을 해주는 것 같습니다. 저희 작품을 통해서 소리가 가지고 있는 그 에너지들을 좀 궁금해 했었어요. 저희 팀원들도. 그래서 물 작품을 한번 해봤었고요. 여기 이제 이런 형태로 이제 찍어서 저희가 그 스틸컷으로도 작품을 남겼었고, 그 다음에 이것들을 저희가 VR 공간에서 좀 체험할 수 있도록 VR로도 전시를 꾸몄었습니다. 그리고 이제 두 번째 작품 같은 경우는 앞서 말씀드렸던 철판 위의 색 모래였었는데요. 이거는 저희가 톡스코프라는 이름을 붙였고, 관객들이 마이크에다가 자기 목소리를 내면 마이크의 특정 주파수가 이제 음성 분석을 해서 주파수를 이제 각 철판 위에다가 뿌리게 돼요. 철판의 그 크기 그리고 이제 그 진폭이 그 앰플리튜드의 양에 따라서 조금 다른 모양들을 갖게 되는데, 이게 정확한 수치와 철판의 두께가 일정하게 저희가 조건이 된다면 항상 같은 같은 무늬가 나오게 됩니다. 특정한 주파수에 따라서 같은 무늬가 나오게 되기 때문에 이를테면 이제 우리 개개인마다 사람마다 목소리가 다 다르기 때문에 그 목소리를 내면 나만의 가질 수 있는 그 문양을 갖게 돼요. 그래서 저희가 조금 재밌게 하려고 색모래를 활용을 했었고요. 실제로 작품을 이렇게 내가 목소리를 내고 나의 목소리로 만들어진 이 그 비주얼들을 이제 찍어서 가져가시기도 했던 그런 작품이었습니다. 이렇게 저희가 사이매틱스를 간단하게 소개를 드렸는데요. 이게 이제 어찌 보면은 그 물리의 과학의 하나의 그 영역으로 볼 수 있는데 사실 제가 궁금했던 거는 가상현실에서 물리가 작동을 하느냐였어요. 그래서 저희가 이제 지금까지 계속 저희 팀원들하고 지속적으로 연구를 해오고 있는 분야는 가상현실, VR에서 표현할 수 있는 오디오는 가능할 것인가? 제가 지금 사운드라는 말씀을 드렸었고 오디오라는 말씀을 드렸는데 아마 이렇게 단어를 드리면 같은 거 아닌가? 라고 생각하실 수도 있을 것 같아요. 일단 저희는 사운드하고 오디오는 철저하게 분리를 하고 작업을 하고 있습니다. 즉 먼저 사운드라는 것은 우리가 듣고 있는 모든 소리들, 청각적 그 감각으로 들을 수 있는 소리들을 저희는 사운드라고 칭하고요. 오디오라는 것은 기계적 관점 혹은 전기적 관점에서 만들어지는 소리들, 즉 제가 지금 마이크를 통해서 이 주파수를 타고 트랜스미터나 리시버를 통해서 들으시는 혹은 스피커를 통해 들으시는 이런 것들을 아마 오디오라고 저희는 부를 것 같아요. 자, 스테레오 오디오라는 것이 우리는 이제 두 개의 스피커 그리고 이제 정삼각형을 이루는 이 스윗스팟을 가졌을 때 스테레오를 우리가 경험할 수 있다고 합니다. 일종의 그 팬텀 이미지라고 하는데요. 그러니까 한국말로는 허음상이라고 하는 물리적인 두 개의 스피커가 있을 때 실제로는 스피커의 소리가 나지만 똑같은 주파수, 똑같은 음량을 출력을 하게 되면 스피커가 위치해 있지 않은 중앙에서 소리에 상이 맺히는 팬텀 이미지가 만들어져요. 이건 이제 물리적인 현상인데 이게 가상현실에서 가능할까에 대한 고민점들을 가지고 저희가 테스트를 해봤어요. 가능하더라고요. 네. 저기 지금 저희가 스피커 두 개를 갖다 놓고 저기다가 모노라고 하죠. 똑같은 오디오 시그널 두 개를 뿌려놓고 혹은 이제 레프트 라이트가 다른 소리를 낼 수 있도록 뿌려봤어요. 스테레오하고 모노하고 이제 차이가 나고 이거는 이제 저희가 알 수 있는 방법은 가상 공간의 가상의 마이크로 녹음을 해서 역상을 시켰을 때 소리가 완전히 사라진다면 이제 과학적으로 입증이 되는 형태겠죠. 그래서 저희가 그런 테스트를 좀 해봤었어요. 그래서 가상현실에서 전기 오디오 시뮬레이션이 가능하겠구나. 그래서 그 다음에 저희가 좀 해봤던 것은 그러면 이런 거 될까? 돌비 애트모스에서 가져온 규격입니다. 7.1.4 채널 스피커 레이아웃 시스템을 가상현실에 구현을 해봤어요. 돌비 애트모스 시스템을 그대로 구현을 해보고 스테레오도 구현해보고 저희가 5.1 채널도 해보고 구현이 가능하다면 가상현실에서 우리가 전기음향이 표현할 수 있다면 돌비 애트모스 극장을 만들 수도 있겠네, 이런 생각들을 저희가 해보게 됐죠. 저희는 이제 그 VR이라는 형태는 일종의 그 개인화된 디바이스를 활용하기 때문에 기본적으로는 헤드폰 착용을 원칙으로 합니다. 헤드폰이나 이어폰을 원칙으로 하고 가상현실 속에서 스피커 시뮬레이션을 한다라는 관점으로 이해를 해주시면 될 것 같아요. 저희가 그래서 이런 형태, 지금 이 음성이 출력되는 시스템 자체는 지금 스피커 공간이기 때문에 아마 정확하게 인지를 하시기 어려우실 수도 있는데 제가 한번 플레이를 한번 해보도록 하겠습니다. 이 시스템 같은 경우는 모노, 그 다음에 스테레오, 그 다음에 7.1.4 채널 이머시브 스피커 레이아웃을 선택할 수 있고 그 다음에 벽의 재질도 바꿀 수 있게 해놨어요. 사실 이게 그 VR에서 이제 스페이셜 오디오라고 하는 그 지점들을 여러분들 많이 들어보실 텐데 소리라는 것이 우리 물리적 공간, 현실 공간에서 발생될 때 한번 생각해 보시면 정지되어져 있는 오브젝트가 내는 소리, 그리고 이동을 하면서 소리를 내는 오브젝트, 그리고 이 공간에서 이제 이렇게 울려 퍼지는 리플렉션 되는 소리들이 합쳐져서 우리가 그 소리를 다 종합해 듣게 되죠. 기본적으로 가상현실에서는 그런 소리들을 물리적인 엔진을 통해서 구현을 하게 되는데, 이 공간에 대한 지점들, 그 다음에 거리, 그리고 소리가 내는 이 발생하는 지점들, 저희 고민을 많이 하면서 소리를 작업을 많이 해요. 뭐 이를테면 바람 소리, 사실 오디오 가이드 관점에서는 바람 소리를 녹음하는 것이 굉장히 어렵거든요. 예를 들면은 바람 소리라고 이제 우리가 만들어낸다고 하면, 바람을 만드는데 바람 사실 소리가 나지 않잖아요. 바람이라는 것은 공기의 흐름에 따라서 그 에너지가 다른 오브젝트와 마찰이 생겨서 나는 소리들인데, 바람 소리를 물리적인 공간에서 난다라는 것을 상상을 한번 해보시겠어요? 소리가 이렇게 왼쪽에서 오른쪽으로 흐를까요? 소리가? 우리는 그렇게 느낄 수도 있겠지만, 실제로 바람 소리는 왼쪽에서 부딪히는 소리는 계속 고정된 위치에서 있을 거고, 그 다음에 오른쪽에서 부딪히는 소리가 계속 고정적으로 있을 겁니다. 다만 양쪽 어느 스팟에서 부딪히는 소리들이 다른 주파수가 조금 더 커지고 조금 더 작아지고 조금 더 커지고 조금 더 작아지고 하기 때문에 실제로 소리가 움직이는 것처럼 느껴질 것이지, 실은 그 고정된 위치에서 계속 소리가 나는 거죠. 이런 식으로. 파도 소리도 마찬가지예요. 네, 바닷가를 한번 상상을 해보실까요? 우리가 전통적인 영화 믹싱을 생각해 보시면, 스피커가 왼쪽 오른쪽 그 다음에 5.1 채널 이런 형태로 고정되어 있고, 그 곳에서 왼쪽으로 오른쪽으로 오디오가 움직이는 것처럼 믹싱을 해서 우리가 오디오를 딱 뽑아내죠. 완전히 패킹된 오디오 파일을 뽑아내게 되는데, 가상현실에서는 그게 이제 유효하지가 않아요. 이를테면 스테레오 오디오 파일을 왼쪽 오른쪽이 다른 소리가 나는 스테레오 오디오 파일을 3D 공간에, 유니티나 언리얼에서 작동한 3D 공간에 집어넣었을 때 과연 그 오디오가 스테레오로 구현이 될 것이냐? 그렇지 않다라는 거죠. 우리의 3D 공간은 실제 우리가 살고 있는 물리적 공간과 같은 형태의 셋업으로 구성이 되어 있죠. 그렇죠? 거리도 있고 높이도 있고 부딪히는 벽들도 있게 될 테니까요. 그래서 파도 소리 마찬가지죠. 파도 소리도 특정한 위치에서 물끼리 부딪히거나 혹은 물과 바위가 부딪히는 소리들이 촉, 촉, 촉 이런 소리들이 계속 번갈아 나면서 실제로 소리가 움직이는 것처럼 느껴지지만, 사실은 고정된 위치에서가 계속 소리가 나고 있다라는 관점으로 저희는 오디오 작업을 하고 있습니다. 이 영상 같은 경우는 저희가 이것도 이제 헤드폰 기반으로 들으셔야 하는 영상인데요. 이 친구는 저희가 도슨트를 소리를 내고 있어요. 설명을 하고 있습니다. 지금 여기는 어떤 공간이고 소리가 어떻게 가고 있습니다. 이 영상에는 앞서 말씀드렸던 움직이면서 소리를 내는 객체와 고정되어 있는 객체, 그리고 공간의 사이즈에 따라서 소리가 변하는 것을 저희가 데모로 만들었습니다. 한번 들어보실게요.
이곳은 컬처 커넥션에서 제작한 실감형 체험을 위한 메타버스 공간입니다. 이곳에서는 소리의 방향과 청취자의 위치에 따른 소리의 상호작용을 느껴볼 수 있습니다. 직접 걸어다니면서 소리가 어떻게 변하는지 느껴보세요. 공간이 넓어졌네요. 컬처 커넥션은 실제 공간의 재질에 따라 소리의 반사를 재현하고 잔향을 구현합니다. 실제 공간과 흡사한 음영 환경을 구현할 수 있습니다. 혹은 이런 작은 방에서 자연스러운 음향을 구현할 수도 있습니다.
지금 보신 거는 저희가 VR 기계 HMD를 끼고 그리고 이제 헤드폰을 쓰는 형태로 관람하는 데모 형태이고요. 저희가 1인칭 VR 시점에서 이제 모니터링 할 수 있도록 비디오랑 오디오를 캡처를 해왔어요. 지금 보시는 것처럼 가상 현실에서 현재는 헤드폰만 가지고도 높이, 소리가 나는 위치, 아래, 위, 앞뒤를 어느 정도는 감지할 수 있게 표현을 할 수가 있고요. 공간의 크기나 혹은 그 높이 넓이에 따라서 혹은 벽체의 재질에 따라서 실시간으로 이런 변화되는 소리들을 렌더링을 하게 되거든요. 그래서 사실 저희는 저희가 이제 스페이셜 오디오라고 하는 이 부분들을 실시간으로 표현을 하는 것을 참 도전적으로 하고 있는데 저희는 여러 가지 실시간으로 해야 되는 때 생길 수 있는 문제들이 있죠. 영상도 실시간으로 해야 되고 네트워크도 있어야 되고 그다음에 이제 저희 소리까지 하려다 보니 디바이스의 한계, 인터넷 속도의 한계 여러 가지 지금 도전해야 될 것들이 많은 현실입니다. 저희 그래서 이거 저희가 앞서 말씀드렸던 그 전기 음향을 가상공간 시뮬레이션 하는 것을 가지고 저희가 지금 추구하고자 하는 방향성은 가상현실에서 라이브 공연을 하는 거예요. 네, 실제 우리가 지금 어디언스 계시고 앞에 스피커에 있는 것처럼 가상현실에서도 실제 우리가 모여 있는 이벤트 장소처럼 공연, 이벤트, 뭐 교육, 전기음향 오디오를 활용하는 이런 이벤트들을 할 수 있도록 좀 만들고 있습니다. 저희는 부천에 소녀 램프 라디오라는 작품으로 참여를 했어요. 여기 벙커에 아마 있을 텐데요. 시간 되시면 함께 봐주시고요. 컬처 커넥션이 오디오, 음악, 사운드 담당했습니다. 네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, and we will get back to some question about that. And we will finish presentation with Elliot Woods, who is also based in Korea.
We've been sitting in a room for almost an hour in the heat, so I'm going to try to shout, so kind of a little bit wake you up. And secondly, sorry to the interpreters at the back who are sitting in a sealed box. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival. Fantasy, right? We think about like fantasy in terms of two approaches. One is the fantasy of fiction, and one is the fantasy of fact. Our projects are often in this second category, and quite like this phrase, telling a lie to tell the truth, as in you tell a fictional story in order to make something from reality become more clear, come into focus. We don't do that. We do the opposite. We use something real. When I say we, I mean me and Mimi. We're Kimchi and Chips. We're based in South Korea, in Gyeonggi-dankil. There's a de-virtualized version of Mimi sitting right behind you there in the middle of the room. And we have different approaches. Today I will explain my approach. So please go and see her talk. It will be very different and also hopefully not 10 minutes long. Briefly showing our projects. Our projects largely are around this notion of images. So you can think about an image as when something imaginary, as in something truly virtual, something immaterial, enters the world. In order for something imaginary to exist in the world, it exists as an image. That image is formatted through an image system. So we are often creating alternative image systems, ways in which images can be rendered in the world, using some different semi-scientific techniques. So my background is physics. I studied physics. I did it for 4 years in Manchester. I grew up in this town in the north of England where these were the kind of spectacles that were around me. So it was this post-Cold War spectacle of the nuclear power plant that was making nuclear material, and then the space dish that was going to make the rockets, track the rockets as they get fired around. But the kind of spectacle I started to get really into were these kind of spectacles. This was the most fascinating thing from my dad's work. So he worked in the county council, which is local government, and they had this box, and it was a random access storage device where there's a robot arm that goes around and grabs cassette tapes and puts them into a reader. Now he works for the county council, so all of these cassettes were like weddings, deaths, marriages. So you can imagine this is like physically a representation of society itself. So social interactions were being virtualized and devirtualized into this physical format. I'm using this term virtualized and devirtualized a little bit. However, as technology progressed, it started to go in this direction. This was my favorite device from university, a PDA. And eventually the storage disappears and the image starts to dominate. And this is when we started to build, when I built my own personal fascination with the way in which these digital forms were existing in physical space. Digital technology was increasingly becoming the image, the way in which the thing is represented. So our installations are sometimes critiques of existing image formats. So this is about television. This was when they turned off the analog television broadcasts in South Korea. We made the first version, and this is the second version. The format of television is 483 lines. So not pixels, but lines. What can be articulated in that format is a different set of images than what can be articulated in pixels on a screen. We wanted to make a representation of everything that's beyond the description. So when a system is trying to describe something, it also starts talking about itself, like the grain on a photograph, or like if you zoom in too hard to a television screen, you might get this kind of visual effect. I can't show everything, but we'll skip through a little bit. This might look familiar. Does anyone know where this is?
Downstairs, yeah.
Exactly. So before this became an art center, it was an incinerator, Sokakjang, and then we created a project which was between the two. So before it was an art center, after it was an incinerator, as a kind of rebirthing process. So the place was a little bit smelly and a bit filthy. I know it's smelly now, but it was like way worse, right? There was just been emptied, it was full of dirt, and we wanted to create some way in which we could make a rebirth ceremony and also bring something virtual into physical reality. So bring something imaginary and delicate into this very brutal space. So for this format, it's very simple. We have a piece of fabric that travels through the air, and then we have an imaginary object, in this case this imaginary moon, which sits in the air, and we pass that fabric through the object. And as it's passing through, we use a 3D camera to track the form of that object, the same kind of camera that was used in some of the previous projects. And therefore we can look at where that fabric is coming into contact with the object. Right, so you can imagine that piece of fabric is like taking a slice of the object. And then using a video projector, we then send light out into the real world to show where that contact is happening. And you can imagine that over time, all the different slices of that object are happening at different moments in time, right? And then what we can do is take a long exposure photograph of that, and we end up with the object coming into existence, right? It was a photography project. It was a photographic print, the result. But the intermediate process is this kind of ceremony, this action. And we thought it might be interesting to try to do it in real time. So we built a little balcony where you could stand over this pit and set the system up with this flag of fabric. And in order to move the fabric, we pumped 20,000 tons of air into the building. So as you stood on this little balcony, you would get this fresh air coming towards you, causing this object to move, and then having it pass through the imaginary object, bringing the two into reality. So you can guess that like some of our projects, or most of our projects, involve creating a lot of hardware. Like we're not really so much using these formats as presenting alternative formats. Like something is implicit in the formats we make. So this format is a light field projector. So some of you from cinema might have heard of the Lightro camera. Anyone heard of a Lightro camera? Not many nerds. Okay, right, a few. It's a camera which has got many, many lenses. And we were trying to inverse this type of camera into a projector. So we could project out from many, many lenses into the world and make condenses of light in the air. So if we have like hundreds of video projectors, and then we want to make this point of light, so this point in the air light up, we just turn on every beam that passes through that point, right? And then with a bit of haze, we can see that point of light in the air. And then we can start to draw objects. So the system was, this is the third version of this system. It's one where we created a very basic AI system to design the structure itself as well, which is why the manufacturing was a little bit complicated. It was shown in Gwangju in South Korea at Ajimunjeongdang in 2016. So each of these mirrors becomes one of those projectors that I mentioned, because it's curved, depending on where we hit the light onto the mirror, changes the angle of output, and therefore it becomes a projector. And then all of these projections combine in the air to create a form. And this form has different possibilities. It can move through space, right? It can exist in 3 dimensions. It can pass through you. The screen is coming up a little dark, but it also has limitations. Like it's difficult to do something like lots of text or multiple people. But we do have some examples where we tried these kind of things. But with these projects, we also started to notice we were dealing with a different phenomena, which is spectacle. So these large-scale visual phenomena become spectacles. And spectacles have historically been, spectacles are often about control, right? So spectacle is often like a way in which you impress upon somebody something so brilliant that it's undeniable. This is always really uncomfortable for people to watch. There's lots of examples throughout history of where spectacle has been used in order to assert power. So what we were trying to do is see what we could submit to instead. So instead of thinking about being the powerful characters in this relation, is if there's a power and submission relation within spectacle, what is the thing that we should submit to, right? So we started to work with more daytime materials and to get away from places where we had all of the control. So these dark areas with projectors and lots of tech, we wanted to do something out in the sunlight. And to work with light under the sun, you really have to play judo with the sun. You can't overpower it. You need to use sunlight to fight sunlight, right? So using these arrays of mirrors, we can start to create shapes of light in the air. And to see those shapes, we'd have a mist, which makes those shapes visible. So we created our own heliostats, so mirrors that can track the sun and draw with sunlight. And the first installation where we used these is Halo, which was shown in London in Somerset House in 2018 and was shown in MMCA in Icheon, Iship, Ilnyeon, so 2 years ago here. So all of these mirrors, each one of which is tracking the sun and drawing a line of sunlight into this mist of water. Together, all of these lines can create a form, and therefore we can create this image of the sun made of sunlight. And of course, it has to suffer everything, all the complications of the weather, the daytime, if people can make it and be patient enough to watch it. But that's one good thing about doing public art, is that people can see it again and again, and maybe they'll get another opportunity next time. So this is lit by the power of 100 suns. There is an equivalent of 1 million lumens of projection light. For anyone who knows projectors, 40 kilowatts of sunlight condensed in here. Another project where we took this approach of working with solar energy in an outdoors environment is Another Moon. So for this one, we wanted to create an object in the sky using some of our previous techniques. In order to do that, we would need a lot of projectors, and it took us 7 years to make this project, but we made our own laser projectors, which had just the right capabilities that we needed, could work on low power, could be networked, had individual computers inside of them, and waterproof, which was the most difficult thing to engineer. And then with all of these projectors, we create these towers. So each projector set becomes one tower, and it collects sunlight during the day, and then it shines it back into the sky at night. So it's this temporal reflection of sunlight. The way in which the moon is in the sky is a reflection of the sun. We're reflecting sunlight, but instead of directly, it's gone through time. And we have this contract with the audience where we say quite explicitly what the rules are. So we will only use energy from that one day. So the exhibition duration will change based on the energy of that day. Even all testing and every other setup will be done with the energy from the site. And then together we form this image, which is a physical object, like a kind of tent almost, which shines up in the top and creates this another moon from these 40 lights. So each tower is independent. They usually spread 100 or so meters apart to create this object. And this is the first time it was shown in Essen, and it's since been shown in Athens, in Greece, and in Barcelona, in Spain. Barcelona in Spain. So you're kind of rendering the sky. All of the detail that comes out is the clouds and the quality of air passing through it. Sometimes you're hitting clouds far away. It's just about noticing it and seeing this different type of image and trying to pick it up with your eyes. It's an image you're not used to, so it takes time to learn how to look at it. And like I said, depending on the weather, every day is different. And at the end of the day, all of the projectors turn off one by one whenever their batteries run out. So I'm trying to be quick here. Everything I've shown, we make open source. So all of our projects are on GitHub. We make all of the technology ourselves, all the engineering, all the code, all of the electronics design. And our next project will be premiering in September in Songyangdong, the new park in the center of Seoul. And here are some other artists and practitioners in Korea, just as a trailer for what else is out there. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we're starting questions. If you have questions in the room, please raise your hand. I will start. Thank you for all four presentations. It was amazingly interesting. I have the feeling that working with so many technologies and art ideas, that all of you are creative researchers, I would say. How do you feel about each project being sort of a prototype, and each time you go back to imagine everything from the roots? Maybe Elliot, you want to start about that? All your projects are you need to do a lot of research, a lot of I would say starting back again every time.
Yeah, I mean, like often somebody was around the studio 2 days ago and they said, "I don't get it. It's like you're making a product each time. Why don't you just use something else?" One, because we can, like, we're quite good at it. But if you use something else, then you're going to have the imprint of the creators of that system, right? Like any system you use has intentions built into it. You can explore within those intentions, or your role can be to expand the possible intentions. So when you're making technology, it's necessary, if you're really wanting to broaden the possibilities, to do something that there are not examples of, right? You can recreate what's already out there. I wouldn't really call that like research, right? It's just like implementation. Or you can shoot yourself in the foot and take a risk, right? Like these are gambles. All our projects are casino projects, right? Like we guess in advance that if we spend enough time in this area, something interesting will emerge. We have to, during that process, maneuver, right? We have to know that it's not going to be what we expect, and we have to find the qualities in the project as we go along. But there's a lot of faith, right?
Vincent, same idea?
I really relate to this, and we have a similar approach of building and from scratch and developing our own tool and our own kind of technological vocabulary. And I think of like we're kind of similar age and a product of a time where things, it's been changing for a long time, but to kind of taste and to dive into kind of almost unknown territory and to taste this idea and of discovery and exploration of a vocabulary was something really addictive, and like working with a famous rock band and kind of engaging into that kind of pop culture conversation with new ways of communicating and telling stories and making feel people was. So after that is this kind of session of kind of continuing to kind of go in place where it doesn't seem to have like it's kind of unbeaten tracks. So for me it's okay, I want to explore something else, not necessarily like the new technological toy, but just other way of engaging with the audience.
And Winslow, and same question, but also can you give us a bit more information about your process involving a lot of technology, but also low tech sometimes on Tree and Forager?
Yeah. I think it's also interesting, just the idea of a prototype. It very much is in the field. I feel like all of my projects are still, even when we show them and we premiere them, they're still prototypes. Because I come from a film and video background, I'm sure a lot of you do as well, because this is a film festival first and foremost. And whenever we would show up at festivals, we were always constantly updating, fixing bugs, pushing builds, until the last minute before we would actually show the projects, while all the filmmakers were cool as a cucumber. I don't know if that's going to translate, but very relaxed because they had locked picture. So film doesn't have the same type of sort of prototype paradigm. With working with technology, inventing technology, using hacking technology, it's never fully finished because there's sort of limitless potential for what you can do. With our projects, it's generally, as I mentioned, with Forager and with Tree and Giant, like half of it, we're always trying to create like a magic trick. That's really what immersive technology is telling a story while hiding. We try to hide the technology, and that will allow people to immerse themselves more. If you create a project where it's all about the tech, then immediately it feels disjointed and you don't have an emotional connection with it. So we always try to lead with the story, but progress technology through that. With Forager, we're, to the best of our knowledge, like some of the first people to 3D scan objects through time. This is something that is very much a logical progression of mixing two technologies. If we weren't going to do it, there would be many other people, and many other people will do it after us. So for us, it was how do we do something that is novel, do it in a way that also resonates through a narrative environment. And just seeing something grow on a table or in a headset only can do so much. So we want to be able to use other senses and things that are low tech. Before I was mentioning, like we, in a lot of our projects, use wind. And wind is something that, we're so used in computers to talking about resolution, with sound, like the amplitude or the bit rate. With wind, there's no 4K wind, there's no 8K or SD wind. Wind is wind, and that's what we've, as humans, that's how we experience things through our own, our memories. We have our own association with a breeze, and that the neural networks or the neural pathways that creates, we want to excite things that have already been established, but in a new way. So very much hiding that, being able to use scent. Scent, we don't intellectualize smell. It just immediately is something that we perceive, and it also is a profound way to trigger memory and to create new memories based on familiar neural pathways that you've already created. So I guess to sum it all up, we're always trying to experiment and explore, but I think we've only scratched the surface, and I think that we're just getting started, and also working with other artists, I think that they have similar sentiment. Like there's so much more to explore.
Just to know, how many times did you spend shooting fungus?
Well, we have millions of photos, millions. We have a big server just filled with mushroom photos, and most of the photos were not usable because we were developing the technology. So we've got probably 8 million photos that we haven't used, and probably about 2 that we are using.
Same question for audio, and bringing that audio was here before image. So digital art and audio are a century old almost. Are you still experimenting? Are you still going back from scratch on every project?
제가 지금 그 위치에 있는 포지션은 약간 그 상업과 예술, position at the between the commercial and art인 것 같습니다. 저는 이제 스타트업을 운영을 하면서 그 회사에서 창업하고 돈을 벌려고 하는 그 아이템들을 만드는 것하고, 그리고 제가 이제 작곡가였기 때문에 새로운 음악들을 만들어내는 이런 아이디어도 사실 굉장히 비슷하다고 생각을 하고 있거든요. 그런 지점에서 이 주제에 대해서 과학이라는 것을, 사실 저는 과학은 아트라고 생각을 하고 있어요. 근데 그런 지점으로 계속 지금 작업을 하고 있는데, 저희가 지금 스타트업에서 만들어내고 있는 이런 것들도 사실은 예술 작품을 하고 제가 작곡을 했던 것처럼 이전에 없던 것들을 계속 만들어내는 작업들을 하고 있거든요. 그러니까 지금까지 나와 있는 어떤 기술들이 있는지 혹은 어떤 서비스들이 있는지를 정말 싹 다 조사를 하고, 그러면 우리는 그것이 아닌 무엇을 또 해야 할까? 조금 다른 지점은 저희가 이제 상업 서비스를 하기 위해서는 이제 클라이언트들이 존재를 하게 되는데, 클라이언트들이 원하는 것들을 이제 맞추어 주다 보면은 도전적인 것들을 하기가 사실 어려운 지점들이 있어요. 안정적이고 그리고 스테이블한 테크놀로지를 활용을 해야 되기 때문에 그런 지점들이 저하고는 사실 갈등이 좀 있는 부분이긴 하나, 여전히 우리 팀원들한테는 제가 계속 도전을 하게 하고 있습니다. 저도 마찬가지지만 새로운 것들을 계속 만들어내고 리서치를 또 하고, 그리고 이제 또 어떤 필요에 의해서 영감을 얻어서 우리가 또 만들 수 있는 상품들이 있기 때문에 저는 기술 그리고 과학은 예술이다라고 생각을 항상 하고 있어요. 그러면서 작업을 하고 있습니다.
Thank you. If you have any question, please raise your hand. I will continue. There is something you're almost all said about simulation and recreating real-life environment and biological topic and creating sun with lights and etc. How do you feel about using new media and technology to represent life? Is that something that you're looking for? Is that, Elliot, on your case? We've seen that you're using, you're recreating everything, but at the end it's for representing real life.
Yeah, I mean, but I like to do it in a very reciprocal way, as in, like, it comes back around to the actual thing. Am I? This, yeah. As in, like, the project is, you have to look at reality to see the project. Like, that's the kind of loop that we build in. Like, it's a bit from the physics element as well in there, right? Of using physical reality or using the physics of the world as the media for articulating an idea. So not like in a very abstracted way of like semiconductors and and then like screen technologies and all these things that are possible in the stack, right? We're kind of in these very small tight loops of like, if you use this particular phenomena in this particular way, it loops back and talks about itself, right? And then to make that loop happen, we might need to use like some AI systems, and we might need to develop like some new algorithms and But eventually we want to bring people back around just to the physics, the physical situation, right? That the work that we're making is articulated out of every day. So the really important point with Halo for us was we wanted to get away from environments where there's so much technology that people just think that we can do whatever we want. In Halo, it's mirrors, sunlight, and water, right? It's like a German beer recipe, it sounds like, right? It's like there's no way in which we can inject in there something they don't understand, so they can figure it out from there. There's motors, and there is an AI system that does the calibration, and there's like camera-based systems which help, but eventually the result is just the mirrors, the water, and the sunlight. So we want people to exist for our projects, right? I'm not saying this is what other people should do. For our projects, we want people to exist inside of those physical scenarios, and we want to talk about those physical scenarios. Like, what does it mean to act like this? If you really use the sun, then you have to put up with the fact that the weather is not perfect. You have to be patient with it, right? And that's really the message in the work, is this patience with like the way reality is, that we don't have control over those things, that if we want to succeed well in physical reality, like live well, then we need to admit like how we can't control it.
So do you think about the audience very early in the process, or does it do you iterate between the project and the place of the user?
I'll tell an anecdote about audience, right? So we were taking Halo down, we were packing it up, and there was one lady there with somebody else, and she said, "Oh, what are you doing? And you're repairing it?" And we're like, no, we're taking it down. Where's it going? Oh, we just put it in a box. It goes back to Korea. It's like, when is it coming back? No, that's not the way it works, right? End of show, over. She was like, "Oh, I came here every day. I walk through here every day. I hated it." I was like, what's this big stupid thing? It's a big waste of money. This is so stupid. And then I sat down one day and I was like, oh, it actually makes sense. I see what they're doing. I see what this thing is. Now I understand it. Now I get it. Now it's for me. And then every day she brought somebody. And that day she brought her niece with her. So she like wanted to show it to her niece, and she was disappointed that she couldn't. And we can't really predict that kind of interaction. But I really enjoyed that interaction with the audience when it's on their own terms. So we're in visual arts more than we're in like film, and the common scenario for visual arts is the gallery. And the gallery is a controlled environment where, as you enter it, there's a responsibility of the audience member to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, it's probably a problem with you, right? But if you put it in public space, it's the other way around, right? If you don't enjoy it, it's a problem with the thing. So like the Eiffel Tower, everyone hated it at first, and it took time for people to like it. Then you exist inside of reality, the complications of the everyday. It sounds like it's not talking about technology, but the thing is, the world is made of all these technical things. And if you want to understand the relationships in the world, you have to use technology. You have to be incorporating technology within it and showing like, here is a limit of where we're at the moment in terms of our relation with these types of technologies.
Thank you. Same question for Winslow. Using virtual reality, you have to think about the user quite directly. How do you work around that, and especially with all the recent evolution of the tech?
So whenever we create an experience, we understand that VR is expensive. The computers are expensive. It's not the most accessible technology right now. So we put a lot of extra care to make sure that we can show it to as wide of an audience when we actually deploy it, when we set it up. Most of our experiences do not have any language associated with them. Obviously, there's limitations or best practices that Meta say you shouldn't show people under 13. We've definitely we've shown some people under 13. I know, crazy. Don't cut that from the film. But it really is, because people still don't know what the effects of the technology are. But putting somebody in for 7 minutes, immersing them in an environment, as long as you onboard them. What's really important is when you create these new worlds, it can be a jarring, totally different place. Just like any art, you're sort of creating your world building, and just like you can't throw somebody in a freezer, or you can't just put somebody in change their name and tell them that this is who they are. If you do that in an abrupt fashion, people will reject that reality. So as storytellers, it's really important to be able to create a safe space where people can have an open mind and slowly be onboarded to a new world using this technology. We've shown it to people who are in their late 90s, who, we made sure that they were very safe throughout the experience, but they demanded that they stood up. They wanted to experience it just like everybody else. And we didn't need to worry about subtitles, because we try to have visual storytelling, multisensory storytelling to be as intuitive as possible. What are the commonalities of these narratives that everyone can share? And not just from a human experience, but the stories we tell are, oftentimes about mortality. That's the sort of most common story of all living things, something that we all, unfortunately or fortunately have in common. So we try to be able to pull from that and create something that you don't have to read a book about. You don't have to understand. Like a video game, oftentimes you guys have played, these video games are getting more complicated, and they're very immersive, and they're incredible, but you can spend 30 minutes just learning about how to set up the buttons and how to fight. So we try to take the opposite approach, try to make things as intuitive for the audience as possible, but also don't tell them that they can't do something. We say that our experiences are not a video game. It's not there's no high score. There's no right or wrong way to do it, so that we encourage people to try to break it, to try to put it in ways, experience it in ways that we didn't imagine as the people who created the frame. So it's like we build a box that we want people to think outside of.
Same question for you, Vincent, because from the work you've done, I have the feeling that you're circling the interaction with the user, especially with the latest one with dancing and extra. And even here, you were with us in the room trying to, play with us a bit, trying to accelerate or not the game. And how do you work around that, around the interaction with the user?
That's probably the thing that kind of connect all the project I've done in my career, is that the interactivity and this kind of that bridge between the participant and the piece. And for me, it's just it's an emotional window and a way to connect in a different way, and this kind of a humbling process to continually imagine a piece where the participation is the water in the river, and that kind of transform and give meaning. So for me, the interactivity needs to be meaningful and not just a mechanic. It needs to tell something. So having a wide spectrum, depending on your own personality, and really thinking about, like, for instance, my mother that is not really comfortable in this kind of context, person that are more shy or more extraverti, and just give room for everyone to kind of have this kind of personal mirror. So for me, this is and since I've started in the late 90s, internet and the web has been my kind of the place where I started, and this kind of universal free democratic platform was kind of a real, has been and still is my first love and the place where I feel alive because I can connect with so many people that I never see. Sometimes I hear they write me back, and it's kind of beautiful to kind of be able to kind of connect and share an experience with tons of people I don't know, like for free, with no boundaries, and just build something. And we take this for granted, but it's still a beautiful kind of canvas.
Thank you. You, same question about audio, because we often talk about binaural and 3D sound, and it's quite powerful in a way, but we don't see that many projects using really 3D sound to interact with people. How do you feel about that?
그 3D 사운드에 대해서 일단 그 소리라는 것이 저는 이런 관점을 좀 가지고 있는 것 같아요. 비주얼로 보여지는 것들은 화질이 딱 변하면 확 바뀌는 것을 느낄 수가 있는데 2D 사운드, 저희가 이제 3D 사운드를 이제 보여드리거나 들려드리면 원래 3D 사운드가 원래 이런 거 아닌가라고 느끼시는 분들이 있어요. 인지를 2D와 직접적으로 비교하지 않았을 경우에는 알지 못하는 경우들이 많았었어요. 그러니까 제가 지금 말씀드리는 이제 3D 사운드 같은 경우는 크게 범주를 조금 나눌 수가 있는데, 공간감을 느끼게 해주는 스페이셜 오디오가 있을 수 있고요. 그리고 이제 두 번째로는 유저의 반응이나 이동에 따라서 있을 수 있는 인터랙티브 오디오가 있을 수가 있어요. 사실 VR이나 인터랙티브 미디어 아트에서는 스페셜 오디오하고 인터랙티브 오디오 두 개가 다가 필요하거든요. 근데 이런 지점들이 사실은 프로젝트를 구성할 때 기획 단계부터 오디오는 어떻게 표현을 할 것인가에 대한 그 기획이 필요할 것 같습니다. 이를테면 이거를 스피커로 구현을 할 건지, 유저들에게 다채널 스피커를 통해서 느끼게 해줄 건지, 인스톨레이션하는 그 비주얼이나 혹은 다른 프로젝트들이 어떠한 오디오 시스템으로 표현을 같이 할 수 있을까에 대한 기획과 고민이 같이 되어져야지 할 것 같아요. 뭐 그런 지점에서 상호작용 오디오와 스페셜 오디오를 구현할 수 있는 그 방법들이 헤드폰이냐, 혹은 다채널 스피커냐, 혹은 내부에서 어떤 플러그인을 쓰느냐, 혹은 리얼타임 엔진을 쓰느냐, 이런 것들이 그 오디오 디벨로퍼들이 고민을 해봐야 될 문제들인 것 같고요. 같이 이제 하면서 초기에 어떤 형태의 작품들을 오디오랑 어떻게 연결하고 관객들에게 어떤 경험을 줄 수 있을 것인가에 대한 고민을 같이 하면서 작업을 하는 것이 필요할 것 같습니다.
Thank you. Maybe my last question is about tomorrow. If anyone has a question, yeah, one question.
So Elliot, I know it's funny that you didn't show one of your process. I seen him in his studio that he actually simulates the whole thing in VR. Like I seen his project already. Like you wanna see it, and he's like show me in VR. And then I was like you after you simulate, you have to make it into VR, just to see it before it's made. And then I just wanted to, just for the sake of the whole VR thing, what were actual benefits of simulating the sun in VR, like the whole set, and just like all the effort you have to go through just to make sure that something had to.
Well, when was that?
It was like a year ago.
I think in our studio.
Yeah, in your studio.
That wasn't a simulation. That was a recording.
Oh yeah, recording in VR.
Yeah. We wasn't. So that was the real thing.
Well, still, like the point stands, right?
No, I get it.
Yeah.
Because we do make simulations.
Right.
And we also do recordings in VR as well. The simulations are like pre-visualizations, right? What's the point of a pre-visualization? It's to share with your stakeholders what the project will be like, right? So for us, it's a little bit to think what would the layout be, what might the project be like, how many projectors might be needed, or something like this. But often it's a communication tool because, like I said, we have these leap of faith projects, and we need to be able to show something, right? Because we always see our projects for the first time on site. We never make a prototype, for instance. We make prototypes of bits, but we can't see the whole thing until the opening. Right. So the only thing you can see before that moment is a simulation. And often it's for social media video trailer for the project, which the venue, the host, the funder might ask for, right? But it's also like for us to play with, just to kind of see what can we do inside a highly manipulable environment. Like if we build all the towers for the projectors for another moon and then go, maybe we should make it a circle rather than a square, you know, then it's like 1 week of work. Right. But if we do it in a computer, it's 3 minutes, right? So creative decision making is always done in response to whatever gives you a sense of what the result will be like, right? Sometimes that's a very direct sense, like an editing timeline if you're making a film. In our case, like those edits are performed with a bit of abstraction, a bit of distance, and often that's in a simulator, or sometimes it's in a spreadsheet, or sometimes it's like just in a mathematical formula. But we have these different distances from the results, right? Which we have to act at whilst we're in the creative process.
Okay. Jet lagging people, hanging out with jet lagging people, giving jet lag. I forgot also about that.
Contagious jet lag.
Right, but yeah, thank you for your answers.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks all four of you. Thanks for the presentation and the answers, and thanks for the festival to host us. Thanks to Jay and the team, and we'll see you around. I guess there is other panels to attend, so be sure to check on the program, and thanks very much.
Thank you.